This is the new Xiaomi Redmi Note 12 Pro Plus 5G, mid-range or flagship. This is confusing. Hi everyone, this is JD, your gadget review friend. Welcome, and welcome back to Gadget Rev Now. This year's Redmi series solidifies Xiaomi's goal of producing mid-range phones with great specs and battles the flagship phones. On my previous video, I talked about better marketing versus innovation. And phones with great marketing sometimes has good-looking numbers on papers, but with underwhelming performance. And then those phones that innovate that looks okay on paper, but gives you better quality of life. Xiaomi Redmi Note 12 Pro Plus is not in any way an innovation, but the parts and components that makes this phone is certainly okay on papers, but really good in my real-life test. To the point that I was confused if this is a flagship phone or a mid-range phone. You probably watch a lot of videos that talk about the specs and the features of this phone, but today I'll take a review on a different level. I will talk about my user experience of using this phone. Let's go to work. Let's start with the unboxing, but if you'd like to jump to the user experience review, I will leave the timestamp on the description below. Let's quickly unbox this, and this will not take too long. I just want you to know what you would get from the beefiest package I've ever unboxed this year. Normally, it's just a small box that includes the phone and the cable, but I feel this package is everything like back on those days when smartphone manufacturers doesn't have quote-unquote courage. So the smaller box on top has the SIM ejector tool and all the paperwork like the manual, warranty guide, and the safety information. You also have the free transparent jelly case, and this is unique for Xiaomi phones. It's bang for your buck because they will include accessories for your smartphones. Then we have the phone sandwich in the middle. We will review this later. Then we have the 120 watts fast charger. It's one of the fastest, if not the fastest charger in the market today. This is like a slap in the face of Samsung, Apple, and Google for not including a charger on their box and selling it separately. Yeah, good job Xiaomi. And we also have the USB-A to USB-C charging cable. This is also a fast charging cable. Xiaomi gave us the blue color, and I actually love this because this is not the usual color like black, white, or gold. It's a strikingly fun looking color. On top, you'll have the headphone jack, the speaker, microphone, and IR blaster. On one side, you'll have the volume and the fingerprint sensor. At the bottom, you have the speaker, charging port, microphone, and SIM card tray. And there's nothing on the other side. And lastly, powering the phone, we will have the MIUI 14 out of the box. And that's it for our unboxing. Let's talk about my real-life user experience. That's a good unboxing, eh? It's been a while since I did a long unboxing experience. Now let's talk about the performance. And the performance of this phone is great. Let me tell you why. I wouldn't sugarcoat it or be critical. If we go by the numbers, MediaTek 1080 is as good as Tensor Chip Gen 1 or Snapdragon 888. It's just a bit slower on multi-cores. On my first day, I've tested it and compared it with the new Pixel 6a and Huawei P50, and it performs equally well. While other tech reviewers said that there's some hiccups on the phone, I didn't really feel that because I tested this phone longer than they do. I took my time just to get the feel of the whole performance, not just a review video talking about specs. I put my 5G SIM on this phone and the 5G network works really well. It's pretty stable and the Wi-Fi 6 is pretty much the same. Playing some low-end games, I mean, it's like a walk in the park. Same with watching videos or scrolling on my social media feed. Everyday task is not a problem. Going for a heavier use like playing mobile games, I won't get the highest graphic performance, but I can vouch that you would be able to play any games without a hiccup. I've been playing with this phone for the last 48 hours on Mobile Legends, and I'm convinced that this can be used as my beater gaming phone. Of course, some of us will use this for both gaming and everyday smartphone, and that's totally fine. It can handle everyday tasks thrown at it. My unit has 8 gigs of RAM with 3 gigs of virtual memory taken from the 256 gigs of storage, which is pretty sufficient for a couple of years use. Sadly, there's no memory card expansion, and I hope that Xiaomi kept it on the mid-range lineup. Still, without the micro SD card expansion, the overall performance of this phone is pretty solid. Okay, so that's a good start, right? I could just end my review there because of the amount of money you would pay for this phone. The performance feels like a flagship phone of last year. But there's one thing Xiaomi is touting this year for the Redmi series, and that's the great camera performance. So by testing this phone, how do I feel about it? Well, to be able to say flagship type performance, we need to identify what flagship performance is. Is it something that would overthrow flagship camera phones or take pictures and videos the same as the top tier phones? Well, the main sensor of this phone is 200 megapixel together with an 8 megapixel ultra wide and an unimpressive mediocre macro camera. I wish that Xiaomi just used that extra space for a telephoto lens or even a monochrome lens, because I think that will be more useful than a macro sensor. The ultrawide performs like any other mid-range phone I can see on this price range. Obviously, it will not win any awards and it will be good on bright conditions. I think the most impressive part of the smartphone is the 200 megapixel main sensor. I think for me, it takes better images compared to other mid-range Chinese phones at this price point. I'm expecting potato-like images, but I was surprised with the overall performance of this phone. The camera has good dynamic range and the images are not overly saturated. That gives a natural feel to it. It has HDR photo that controls the highlights of the image and exposes the dark shadowy part of the scene. You also have the AI that detects the scene and manipulates the algorithm of the camera to give you better looking images. The autofocus is pretty good on the 200 megapixel camera. It's actually better than Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra because sometimes that flagship phone hunts on 200 megapixel shoot. The 4K video of this phone is pretty standard to say at least. I mean, it will give you detailed videos, but it lacks some cool features of a flagship phone like portrait video or 60 FPS recording. Also, not to mention no 8K recording, but understandable. This is the sample video recording of Xiaomi Redmi Note 12 Pro plus 5G in 4K 30 FPS. And this is the selfie video recording 1080p at 60 FPS. I could just end my full user experience review there because I think the performance and the camera are the top things consumer wanted to know, but wait, there's more. It has the big tablet-type 6.67-inch AMOLED screen with 1 billion colors and 120Hz refresh rate. And if you think that's all, this phone can reach 900 nits of max brightness, so using this outdoors will not be a problem. For the past 3 days I'm using this phone, I'm walking around every day and I could definitely see everything on the screen, even with direct sunlight. Again, by using this phone, I'm actually contemplating on my judgment buying flagship phones because I don't want to spend twice or 3 times as much for a brighter screen. Do the screen technology of this phone good enough for a regular consumer? What do you think? For me, I would say yes, this is sufficient. If making the screen brighter kills the battery faster, then I would go with a cheaper brand with the great screen features. I will continue because I'm feeling the vibe of the music. So I was using this phone for the past 3 days, doing just everything from gaming, social media, and using it for heavy content creation. Creating content means using a lot of camera work. The battery life is good. It has 5000 mAh and definitely this is a full day phone for me. I think I would still reach the second day with a little bit under 20%. I've seen flagship phones with better battery life performance, but I couldn't really compare this mid-range phone because it's using MediaTek Dimensity 1080 that might not be as power efficient as other flagship phones. What's so impressive about this phone is the 120 watts fast charging, which can top up the phone from 0 to 100% in 20 minutes. When I first charged it, I was a bit scared because I know that when you use a fast charging speed, the battery will degrade faster, and that's probably one of my questions with this phone. Will it survive 2 to 3 years? Still, the charging is pretty awesome knowing that this mid-range phone can charge better and faster than any other flagship phone. The sound of this phone is pretty amazing. I've watched a couple of review videos of this phone and I feel like they didn't give justice on the loudspeaker. It is stereo sound quality with Dolby support, so you can play around with the audio profile, but I think the best quality of the sound is it is dual firing speaker top and bottom, so when you're playing games on landscape mode, it kinda gives you a well-balanced sound because it's firing on both sides. This phone also has the legacy feature that everyone doesn't have, which is the audio jack. So you have both the headphone jack and the great sounding dual firing loudspeakers. You will definitely enjoy games and watching movies on this phone, I can guarantee. I know Xiaomi will cut something here to be able to bring down the price, and I'm glad they didn't do it on the performance, camera, and screen technology. What they did is they put an older Gorilla Glass 5 protection on this phone, which is a blessing for me. Better than Gorilla Glass 3 on most smartphones and the plastic back of Samsung Galaxy A series. So thinking about it, it's not really a downgrade. I'm just a bit sad with that underwhelming IP53 protection, which is only dust and splash resistant. So don't swim and don't shower with it. So everything looks good, but I checked the operating system and to my surprise, this phone is still running on the older Android 12. A bit of a bummer coming from Samsung Galaxy A5 III, which I tested a week ago because that phone is receiving tons of updates and it actually gets 5 years of software support. And with the discussion of software support, this phone can only support 2 years of major OS upgrade. So again, the software update is not the strongest suit of the series, but for everyone that's using an Android phone, 2 years is good enough. Let's be honest here, even an Android phone 5 years ago with Android Nougat would still perform as good as the one using Android 13, but not as feature-rich and optimized as the newer OS. I mean, some aesthetic and security changes on the new Android operating system, but honestly, not a deal breaker. So this is the Xiaomi Redmi Note 12 Pro Plus. Is it the flagship or mid-range? The answer is yes and no. No, because on papers, you would see that it's not using the most advanced chip and parts a flagship phone will offer. There were cuts on areas like build quality, protection, and software updates, and it uses MediaTek Dimensity 1080, obviously the biggest cut you will find. But yes, it is a flagship because although the chip is mid-range, in real life, it performs equally well with flagship Snapdragon 888 and Tensor chip Gen 1. The camera has things to improve, but I feel it's pretty solid considering that the 200 megapixel main shooter can duel like most phones in optimal conditions. The screen is great, that was actually compete with the Samsung best mid-range phone, and the charging speed with the addition of 120 watts charger is just pretty amazing, packing everything on this price point. Yes, this phone confuses me in a good way because it's a mid-range phone, but performs like a flagship. So there you go, hope you enjoyed this video. I'll continue to compare this phone in our channel, maybe the Samsung Galaxy A5 IV, the Pixel 6a, and the iPhone SE 2022, so stay tuned. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.